Hey everyone, my name is Dillon Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director of GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast. And welcome to a brand new episode of No Streaming Required, your weekly deep dive into all the latest and greatest in the world of physical media. Welcome back. We have a jam-packed episode for you this week. It is another installment of Kino Lorber Mania. It is when we talk about one of my absolute favorite labels, Kino Lorber, and we have so much to dig into on that front. But before we do that, we have several movies fresh from theaters that I must get in front of you, plus some absolute classics debuting on 4K. As usual, I will try to give as broad of an overview as possible for most of these, while still giving you the most essential details. But if you need more of a deep dive, make sure to check out GeekVibesNation.com for a written review so you can get a little bit more in-depth and stuff. That'll usually be posted within a week or two of these videos going live. But for now, I'll just dig right in with one of the bigger releases to come out at the end of last year. It is now hitting 4K. It is the 4K debut of Predator Badlands from 20th Century Studios. This has a nice embossed slipcase that you can maybe see there. Nice texture there. This is the latest in the Predator franchise from director Dan Trachtenberg, who did Prey. And this is a little bit of a different take on the Predator characters. Here we actually get to have the Predator as the protagonist. And it follows up one particular member of this race who is kind of known as like kind of the runt, like kind of a small weakling of the group. He has like a close relationship with his brother who kind of wants the best for him, but he is like the son of a king who is like of this race that just accepts nothing less than perfection. And then one day, whenever some big family drama goes down, I won't spoil everything. Our protagonist character, he goes off to another planet to try to kind of find like this apex predator, hunt it, and kind of bring it back as kind of a token that he has been underestimated and he can kind of finally prove himself to his father. There's a little bit of revenge story and a little bit of like just deep family drama within this. But while he is on this planet, he meets a robot, an android played by Elle Fanning, her character here, who is a product of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. And they kind of enter into kind of like an unlikely friendship and stuff. And there's a lot of nuances throughout here, but it's definitely an interesting way to take this franchise. I know a lot of people didn't like seeing the Predator like character as like our hero of this journey because they're so used to just having predators hunting our heroes. But I think it's an interesting way to kind of open up the lore of this race and kind of get a different perspective and stuff. And overall, I think it's a very entertaining action movie. Unlike some other Predator movies, I wouldn't really classify this as a horror movie, but there's a lot of really good action within here and some great digital effects that are rendered pretty well, and everything kind of blends pretty seamlessly. Some good makeup effects as well. And some really good acting on behalf of Elle Fanning. The person who is like acting as our lead predator, he does a good job as well, but it's underneath a lot of like makeup and effects and stuff. So you don't get as much from him, but you can see that there's a lot going on underneath internally within him. So yeah, entertaining movie. It's a atypical entry into the Predator franchise, but one that I still think is rewarding. And if you're open to it, I think you'll have a good time. And this 4K presentation looks really, really nice. It's in Dolby Vision with Dolby Atmos audio. So on a video standpoint, it looks just amazing. Just really deep, complex colors. There's a lot of like scenes in kind of darkness, especially at the beginning on their home planet, that the deep black levels are very impressive. And then there are no blown highlights or anything like that. And then the Atmos track with all the activity that's going on with all different creatures coming out and everything going on, ships flying overhead, it really benefits from the Dolby Atmos track. So make sure The Blu-ray that is included here only has a DTS 7.1 soundtrack. So if you want a full Atmos experience, make sure you go 4K. And in terms of special features, I think Trachtenberg seems to be a fan of physical media because there's a good number of special features here. He does provide a commentary track. You also get several different featurettes and some deleted scenes. So a good assortment here from 20th Century Studios for Predator Badlands. So if you are interested in this franchise, they've done a really nice job with this 4K release. And I think it is a worthwhile endeavor. Also fresh from theaters is another sequel. From Lionsgate, we have Now You See Me, Now You Don't, the third in the Now You See Me series. And it's been a while. It's been a while since the last installment. And I think this one continues the story pretty well. It brings in a younger cast of characters here. They bring in a younger group of magicians here, played by Dominic Sessa, Ariana Greenblatt, and Justice Smith from I see the TV Glow fame. But then you also have the returning horsemen all here, which I really like seeing Isla Fisher return after not being present in the second movie. But it's good to have her return, and seeing all the different characters from the previous movies return in different capacities was a really rewarding experience. But this time you have these two factions, the younger faction and the established faction, combining forces to take down this diamond heiress who kind of has her fingers in like gun trafficking and all kinds of like seedy developments around the world that comes from like illegal diamond mining, played by Rosamund Pike. And just this franchise is very exaggerated and silly a lot of the times. Like, yes, these are magicians pulling heists and fighting crime and all this kind of stuff and fighting for the underdog. And as like magic is concerned, it's a pretty supernatural in kind of execution, because it's very unlikely that a lot of this stuff could actually occur. But it's kind of like a very popcorn fun time. And I enjoyed myself enough, just like from enjoying this ensemble and just kind of the frothy nature of this story. It's ridiculous magic tricks, but it's a fun time, and it kind of keeps a really good pace. Some good like quippy banter between all the characters and everything. Always love seeing Woody Harrelson on screen. He has some nice exchanges with Dave Franco's character, and the plot, it's not too super important, but it kind of gets you where you need to go with these characters, and some nice reunions and all that kind of good stuff. So if you're a fan of this franchise, I think this is the second best of the three. I think the second one is the worst of the three. I don't hate it, but it's just not as strong. And the first one I still think is the best. But fun entry. I had a good time, and this is a nice 4K release. You get a Dolby Vision transfer with Dolby Atmos audio. This is a brand new movie, and it looks sleek and amazing in 4K. So many like textures on the clothing and deep colors. The Dolby Atmos, while not as active as like Predator Badlands, is very effective for what it needs to do there, especially with like the expansion of the music and different kind of exceptional set pieces, like with like this initial diamond heist in a museum is very effective and stuff. So Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision, both of those are working really well. Commentary from director Ruben Fleischer. You get some featurettes, you get some deleted scenes. This is another one with a good number of featurettes as well. So Lionsgate did a really nice job with this newest installment of the franchise. Will there be another one based on how these make money? Probably. And I'll gladly watch it. But it's a ridiculous series, but I enjoy it. And if you do too, I think you'll enjoy this 4K. So Now You See Me, Now You Don't. Glad to have this in my collection. Not as enthusiastic going over to Universal and their 4K release of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. This is a franchise that I just don't think is completely made for me. I didn't love the first movie. I think there is some kind of a barrier to entry for me as someone who had no familiarity with this property before the first movie. I had maybe heard the name of the games before, but any kind of like deep lore or references that are in these movies, none of it is getting to me. I don't understand any of it. But as just an enjoyer of movies, and I like the premise of just kind of like potentially malevolent animatronic characters like at a children's play place. But the first movie didn't light my world on fire, and this one I think doesn't really do anything much different from that perspective. I was really impressed with the opening scene of this movie, which I found pretty intriguing. It's pretty creepy. It's a flashback, and just like seeing this initial character not being believed by like all the adults around her and kind of being like kind of like waved off when there's a very real threat in front of her. That I found that to be very kind of anxiety producing, and like there's kind of some tense moments. But once you get into the present day where you're a year past the events of the first movie, that just it just kind of like lost me, just because a lot of the characters are making really stupid decisions. You have Josh Hutcherson's little sister character who wanting to reunite with her animatronic friends, and just definitely making some bad decisions that lead off to our whole plot and everything. And a lot of the characters, it's just the movie takes itself very seriously. And just based on this kind of like exaggerated premise alone, it could stand to be a little bit more fun and campy and stuff. And it's not particularly horrific as well. I mentioned being a little bit tense during the opening scene just because of the situation, but nothing really match that for the rest of the movie, and I don't find this series to be particularly scary. I'm impressed by the animatronic figures, like the care put into them. I think they look cool and stuff, but just all the lore and storylines to this franchise, I don't have a connection with it, so I don't get particularly excited for any like teases to future movies or plot developments or everything. I don't think it's executed particularly well in these movies. But for hardcore fans, I've heard that they've been loving it. So if you're already a fan of the series, you'll probably love the second one. If you didn't love the first movie, I don't think the second one will convert you. But this second film does get a really nice 4K release from Universal. You do get it in Dolby Vision with Dolby Atmos audio. Once again, looks really amazing. Once again, a title with a lot of dark corridors and everything, so the deep black levels are very helpful. There's no black crush or anything, no blown highlights. Nice color complexity throughout, especially in the lighting and some of the production design. You do get an array of featurettes that are pretty brief, no commentary track this time around. But if you're a fan of the series, this release itself is good. It's just the movie. It's not going to be winning any new fans for this franchise. So Universal and their release of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. If you like this franchise, and you can do with that information as you will. Next up, also from Universal, we have the Blu-ray release of Song Sung Blue, starring the Oscar-nominated Kate Hudson, in this film about two people who fall in love, and they're singers. They start a Neil Diamond tribute band. This is based on a real-life story that I won't give away too much, but I will just say this is about the lives of these two characters and their families and stuff, and how different dramatic developments along this kind of journey as a Neil Diamond tribute band, how they kind of like try to grow with one another and handle any kind of hardships they face and everything. And I am going to be more of a defender of this movie than some. I know a lot of people really have it out for this movie and they think it's like abysmal. I don't think it's abysmal. I think it's perfectly fine for what it is doing. And definitely got a lot of the songs stuck in my head for days after watching this. And I think all the performers are doing a nice job. Like Kate Hudson, while she may have kicked out people from the like Oscar lineup that I liked more, like Amanda Seyfried from The Testament of Anne Lee, or Chase Infinity from One Battle After Another, she does a good job in this. And Hugh Jackman is fine as well. But the movie, it is enjoyable, and I think that's a lot of why its success at like the awards is what they are, because like there's a lot of like the we call like the older guard of the academy, the traditional guard. They like kind of more like meat and potatoes, like fun, like heartwarming, sentimental type filmmaking, and that is kind of more so what this is kind of your classic mid-budget adult dramedy. And it provides a good time, and I did have a good time with it. I don't think it's amazing, but I definitely didn't hate it. So I think go into this with an open mind. Don't let any kind of like outside like opinions about like awards and stuff influence your opinion. If you just want a solid adult drama that's very mainstream friendly, Song Sung Blue, you can do much worse, and I think it's perfectly a fine movie. This I wish it would have gotten a 4K release, and if it ever does get a 4K, I will probably get that upgrade. But for this Blu-ray, it looks nice. Great HD transfer, bold colors, nice textures and stuff. So perfectly solid HD transfer. You do get a Dolby True HD 7.1, so no Atmos, but 7.1, so it's still pretty immersive and really nice and like grandiose with these songs, like filling up your speakers and immersing you in that wall of sound. Outside of the music, it doesn't get too kinetic, but definitely during the music scenes, that feels nice and big as you would want from these performances. In terms of special features, you do get a commentary track from director Craig Brewer here, along with the producer. You do get some featurettes, and then you get a couple of extended performances, including one for Sweet Caroline. So if you like pretty standard adult mainstream drama, Song Sung Blue, it's a crowd pleaser, and I think it is worth checking out on that basis. I think a better movie, but still kind of more of a crowd pleaser, from Searchlight Pictures is the Blu-ray release of Rental Family with Brendan Fraser. This is a story about a actor. He plays an actor who is living in Japan. He's like fluent in Japanese and everything. And he's trying to find work, and he ends up becoming a part, signing on to this company that stage like life events for people, and they hire people on to kind of like be a part of different events. Like he ends up coming on, and he works with a couple of different people. So like in the case of like this character, his daughter, unbeknownst to him, he's a formerly famous actor who his daughter thinks people are starting to forget about him, and it's kind of like taking a blow to his like emotional state. So she hires this company to send Brendan Fraser's character to pose as a reporter who is like conducting an interview to make people think that people are interested in his legacy still, and all that kind of good stuff. And then there's another storyline where he actually pretends to be the dad of this young girl to try to help her get into the school, and it kind of develops into something more. So it's like kind of all of these like things where he's kind of inserting himself into these situations and trying to yield like a positive emotional result within the confines of what he's hired to do, but then he kind of gets a little bit more emotionally involved in certain scenarios and everything. And it's very heartfelt and emotional, and I found it to be very charming. And it's a really good one from Searchlight Pictures that I think some people find it to be a little bit too like sappy or sentimental, but it really hit the sweet spot for me, so I did really quite enjoy it. And I love seeing Brendan Fraser on screen, and a really solid role for him that kind of like works towards like his plays to his like puppy dog qualities, while still having a little bit of depth to him and everything. So I think it works out really well. Blu-ray looks really nice from Searchlight Pictures. Some nice detail and like all the production design and everything. I don't think this movie was ever going to be big enough to get a 4K release, but the Blu-ray does look nice. DTS 5.1 sounds good as well. And then you also get a brief making of that's about like 11 minutes, and then you get 17 minutes of deleted scenes. So Rental Family from Searchlight Pictures. I think it's a winner and definitely worth checking out. Maybe if you want to sample it on Hulu or something, I believe it will be here by the time this video is released. But definitely check it out. It's a really good film and worth checking out. Next up, we have a couple of big iconic films from the Warner Brothers catalog. We have the 4K debut of All the President's Men with Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman. This is the classic movie in which Woodward and Bernstein are investigating the Watergate break-in and trying to break that story at the Washington Post. It is a classic, and I don't think I need to go too much into all the details, but it's a really good investigative movie that is still relevant to today about like the freedom of press and like the power of it and stuff. But even though as far as like presidential scandals are concerned, this one kind of seems more quaint, but still a really good movie. Fantastic performances from everyone involved. Like, of course, there are leads here, but then you have people in smaller roles like Jane Alexander, who is really great, and just so many just wonderful performances, great pacing. Everything is just like firing on all cylinders. So just a really classic movie that I enjoyed checking out once again. I'd seen it a couple years ago on my DVD that I had. I never had this on Blu-ray, but having that DVD release, this is a huge upgrade from that. And from what I've seen online and kind of parsed and everything, it does seem to be a really nice upgrade from that Warner Brothers Blu-ray previously released as well. This comes from a 4K scan of the original camera negative. It has been remastered in Dolby Vision, which is very notable because Warner Brothers, with their main catalog, not their like manufactured on demand program, they usually only do HDR10. So the fact that they are putting Dolby Vision on this was very, very, very pleasant surprise, and I hope that it's indicative of a change in policy, because it should just be standard for these movies to be getting Dolby Vision at this point. Either way, it's a really great transfer. It's natural film grains intact. Everything looks like, it's not the most colorful movie, but everything looks like accurate to its source. All the black levels are deep, no crush, no blown highlights, like under the fluorescence of the office. Everything looks incredible. It's a really, really nice looking 4K disc, and the original audio tracks are included. So the DTS 2.0 audio is accurate to the original soundtrack, so nothing's been like manipulated or anything to kind of make it sound worse. It definitely sounds like nice and cleaned up and sounds great and dynamic within its original theatrical confines. And then you get 2 new featurettes, pretty brief, like less than 10 minutes long each, that kind of reflect on the movie. And you do get additional like archival featurettes and everything from previous releases. Unfortunately, Warner hasn't broken their habit of leaving off some key special features. Most notably, I think here is the omission of the commentary track from Robert Redford, which I think is a real shame that they left that off here. I think it should have been included. And then there's also, from a previous Blu-ray release, a feature-length documentary, like I think called Watergate Revisited or something along those lines. That's not included on this release. But most of the rest of the featurettes are carried over, but there are those key ones that aren't. So if you have previous releases, don't necessarily like sell those off right away. If you're a special features nerd, make sure to hold on to those so you don't lose anything that you may regret selling off later. But in terms of just like audio video quality, home run from Warner Brothers. This is a classic movie, multi-Oscar nominated, and just such a deserving release for a great movie, and I think fans will be more than pleased by how this looks and sounds on 4K. And if you think that was good, we have one of the most Oscar-winning movies of all time. Best Picture winner, epic Ben-Hur, starring Charlton Heston, winner of 11 Academy Awards, as you can see down there. I don't think I need to get too much into this movie, but Charlton Heston playing a Jewish prince who gets betrayed and has to kind of work his way back up, tales of revenge, chariot races, all that kind of good stuff. So, biblical epic. So you get the movie spread across on 2 discs. So you get the first disc here, second part here, and then a disc for strictly for special features. If you want the movie on Blu-ray, you are not getting it in this set. You can get the movie on 4K and then an additional special features disc. The only thing that you get special features wise on the first 2 discs is the commentary track. But you do also get this film in Dolby Vision. Like I said, Warner, for these last 2 releases, having Dolby Vision, huge benefit of this remastered release. I believe it's from a new 8K scan that's been like spiffied up and everything. I think the last release also came from an 8K scan, but I think they used some newer technology to refine this and make it look its absolute best. They fixed, like, I know the original elements of this film were in pretty poor to terrible shape. And that kind of resulted in a few small anomalies that couldn't quite be ameliorated as well on previous releases, looking much better this time around. Natural film grains intact. Everything just looks stunning. And they give, like I said, this split over 2 discs, so plenty of room to breathe. A nearly 4-hour movie, just so they didn't kind of try to cut corners or anything. They give plenty of room, so you're not noticing many encoding issues or anything like that. Everything looks and sounds great. And in terms of the sound, you do get 2 options. You get a new Atmos track or the original 5.1 track. While the inclusion of the Atmos track is cool, and if for people who want to embrace the more modern technology, I think it sounds fine. But I honestly prefer the original 5.1 track. It sounds nice and appropriately bombastic and just really captures the spirit of the movie. So I think that sounds really good. But at least they gave you the option, so I'm perfectly fine with that as long as the original option is there. You do get the commentary track, as I mentioned, isolated audio. You get a couple of new special features, pretty brief, and you get some archival documentaries and stuff. You don't get, there's like a one kind of archival retrospective piece that's not carried over, and then you also don't get the 1920s silent film version of this tale that was on previous Blu-ray releases. That was only in standard definition on previous releases. I know a lot of people are clamoring for Warner Archive or someone to release the 20s version, at least on Blu-ray, if not higher format. So if you need a copy of the original silent version, don't sell off any previous releases. But for now, this is the ultimate version of Ben-Hur. It is a real looker, and if you are someone who has a great affection for this movie, I don't see why you would be disappointed. It's a appropriately epic movie given an epic transfer and audio options. So Ben-Hur, great release from Warner Brothers, starting the year off right with 2 ultimate releases of some classics. But that is not the end of our show, far from it. Now is where we enter our Kino Lorber land. So many releases to dig into this week. We got first a double dose of Hercule Poirot, starting off with Peter Ustinov as the titular detective in Agatha Christie's Death on the Nile. You get a star-studded cast here. In addition to Ustinov, you got Angel Lansbury, Mia Farrow, Betty Davis, George Kennedy, Maggie Smith. So many people here. And then you also, notable, you get a reversible cover art. So you get that cover art or this cover art underneath. So if you flip this one around, it would be just this cover art. But I flipped that just for convenience, so you can kind of see this nice option for different cover art. So it's a classic adaptation of the Agatha Christie story that was unceremoniously adapted a couple years ago with like the likes of Gal Gadot and everything by Kenneth Branagh. But this one is much better. But it just follows that classic story, and it's just done really well with some of our like best performers of the era. This was 1978. And it's executed really well. It's a pretty long movie at 2 hours and 20 minutes, but it doesn't feel it. It keeps a really good pace as you kind of like get on board with these characters and follow them and just kind of go about this like a murder investigation and seeing this detective really kind of figure stuff out along the way. So if you like Poirot stories, Death on the Nile, it's a pretty fun one with a really great cast. This has been given a new 4K remaster. This one is a 4K scan of the 35 millimeter original camera negative in Dolby Vision, conducted by Studio Canal with the original DTS 2.0 audio. Original audio sounds really nice. It is properly calibrated. Everything sounds executed just right. The Dolby Vision like 4K transfer, it looks quite nice. It's you can tell the Studio Canal did a really good job with the transfer in terms of like restoring it and making sure all like kind of like specs and stuff were cleaned up. Everything looks really good, and Dolby Vision really brings a lot out of these locations that we visit. But this being Kino, it is not absolutely perfect, just because their encoding isn't always the best. But overall, this is one of their better looking discs, and I think that despite some kind of minor compression issues here and there and some mushy grain and stuff, this is a really nice fetching looking release. So audiovisual wise, overall, I'd say it's a winner. You do get some special features, including a commentary track, making of, featurette, and some interviews. So Death on the Nile, if you're a fan, I think this 4K upgrade is quite good, and worth it for fans of this detective, who also continues his antics in the 1982 outing, Evil Under the Sun. Peter Ustinov returning here to investigate a death in a more tropical locale while he's on vacation. So once again, reversible cover art here. I like that. That's pretty cool. And the cast here is good. Maybe not as star-studded as Death on the Nile, but still quite endearing. You got people such as Jane Birkin, James Mason, Roddy McDowell, Sylvia Miles, Diana Rigg, Maggie Smith. You always have Maggie Smith in these movies, but she did a nice job in this along with all the rest of them. I think it's a pretty interesting case that he is trying to solve, and I enjoyed this one quite a bit as well. Like the last one, 4K scan of the 35 millimeter original camera negative in Dolby Vision, conducted by Studio Canal with the original audio. Everything I said about the previous release can pretty much be applied to this one. Really gorgeous looking transfer. It's been cleaned up quite well. Maybe some minor encoding issues that could be cleaned up with like a different label. But for what Kino's doing at their price point, they usually put out at least a pretty decent disc. Even though I wish they could kind of get back to their prime years earlier in their run where they were really kind of delivering the goods with their 4K transfers. This is more so like good, not great 4K transfers, but for as much as they release, it's kind of like a accepted evil, I guess. Like, I wish it was better, but it's not like an eyesore or anything like that. So Evil Under the Sun, pretty decent looking transfer. Mostly pleased with it. Commentary track, making of, and some radio spots. If you're really picky, might not really appreciate the encoding of this one, but if you're more of a casual viewer, I think you'll really like Evil Under the Sun. It's a nice transfer. And just continuing with Agatha Christie stuff, we have The Mirror Cracked. This time we go away from Poirot and we go over to Miss Marple. Here we have, once again, Angela Lansbury returning, this time as Miss Marple. And here's another reversible cover art. We have people like Kim Novak, Rock Hudson, Elizabeth Taylor, Tony Curtis, Geraldine Chaplin. So a nice array of people here. Elizabeth Taylor and Kim Novak are the standouts here as kind of rival actresses who really hate one another. And they're all kind of like in the midst of this kind of investigation where a woman gets killed. Maybe there was another intended target, and just Miss Marple trying to kind of use her kind of powers of perception to figure out what happened and stuff. And it's a pretty interesting case once again. I like a good kind of like detective story, and this one is perfectly pleasant. Not as long as like something as Death on the Nile at 1 hour 45 minutes. Another 4K scan of the 35mm original camera negative from Studio Canal, with the original DTS 2.0 audio. So thankfully, original audio is once again retained. Really great looking restoration. Transfer is really good, not excellent, but for what it's doing, it does well. And then once again, you get some special features, including a commentary track and some TV spots. So The Mirror Cracked, another good investigation. If you're already picking up the Poirot movies, might as well pick this one up and really just have yourself a good time. Going back a little further to the 1940s, 1945, and the release of the crime comedy Hold That Blonde, starring Veronica Lake and Eddie Bracken. Eddie Bracken plays a kleptomaniac who is in that kind of takes on that because he's kind of like traumatized by being spurned by a woman in the past. So he's like led down to a path of kleptomania. He's advised by his therapist to maybe find a different woman, who happens to be Veronica Lake, who is in the midst of her own kind of crime saga, being involved with some nefarious people who she doesn't necessarily want to be involved with. She's like, she has a good heart and everything. But they kind of get connected with one another, and there's romance, there's crime, all that kind of good stuff. A lot of like fun asides and everything. So nothing too serious or like overly heavy. It's kind of dealt with a light touch, but I did enjoy it. 2K scan of the 35mm original camera, 35mm fine grain, excuse me. So it's not a perfect transfer. You can kind of see some more significant like nicks and scratches, more so than stuff that comes from the original camera negative or like 4K scans or anything. But this 2K scan is perfectly acceptable. Nothing like totally that takes you out of the picture. It's just a little bit more worn than certain titles that we're talking about today. But definitely enjoyable, and sound is solid as well for a film of the 40s. Nothing seemed overly out of place or hollow or anything like that. Sounds decent enough. You do get a commentary track as a special feature, and like some trailers and stuff. But Hold That Blonde, if you're a fan of Veronica Lake especially, it's worth checking out. It's a pretty fun, like lighthearted crime film. So check it out if you are interested. Heading over to French cinema for a couple of titles, starting out with the 4K upgrade of Diva. This is a story of two cassette tapes. One is the bootleg recording of this famous singer who has never had herself recorded. She believes in kind of the purity of a live performance, but one obsessed fan at the beginning of the film records a performance of hers, and this becomes a highly sought after item. At the same time, there's another recording of a kind of a corrupt police captain doing some nefarious things and someone kind of like has evidence against him. And there's also some people trying to go after this tape that kind of like leads him to some ties him to all these criminal activities and stuff. So there's these two conflicting tapes. There's a couple of different factions going after each tape, and there's some confusion about like mixing up the tapes and everything like that. So it is a crime tale. It is a tale of kind of like duplicity and obsession and just kind of criminal underworld stuff. There's some really impressive car chases. There's some foot chases. There's a few erotic scenes. It's not overly like exploitative or anything like that. It's mostly tastefully rendered, but it's a really interesting like tone that it strikes. But I found myself pretty entertained by it, and I know a lot of people do enjoy this movie, and it worked out pretty well in terms of just kind of all the kind of layers going on here. It all ties together pretty well, and I enjoyed myself. And I've never owned this before, but this did get a 4K upgrade. Once again, in conjunction with Studio Canal, they usually do pretty solid work. This time it's another 4K scan of the 35mm original camera negative in Dolby Vision with the original 2.0 audio in the original French. There's some people speaking English, but most people are speaking French. You get 2 commentary tracks, one full-length commentary, one is scene-specific commentary track, and then you get some interviews and stuff. Quite a few interviews, as you can kind of see back here, like all the interviews that are listed here. So good number of interviews, and then the commentary tracks, and then a really nice looking presentation. In terms of like the encoding and everything, this is one of the better ones. Everything I think is quite good. So if you're a fan of the film, this restoration looks nice, and it seems encoded pretty well by Kino standards. So I think it's worth picking up. It's a good movie, and full of good twists and turns, and just like loaded with special features, and it looks and sounds good. So Diva, worth checking out if you're a fan of like French crime cinema. Speaking of such, we have French icon Jean-Paul Belmondo in The Vultures on Blu-ray. This is Belmondo as kind of like a French Foreign Legion fighter who is kind of tasked with going on a mission to retrieve like kind of like these gold bullion, and him and just like a couple of his people trying to figure out if maybe they could like abscond with this money and like have millions of dollars to themselves, and all the people that they meet that kind of like put a hitch in that plan. And it is a dramatic movie, but it has some lighthearted elements, especially whenever Belmondo starts kind of like getting associated with like women, and how he kind of interacts and flirts with them and stuff is very lighthearted. But there are some dramatic moments as well. Yeah, decent kind of like wartime-ish crime movie. I enjoyed myself. Belmondo's always like a very energetic performer. He does a good job in here. And this isn't listed as any kind of specific restoration or anything like 4K or 2K scan or anything like that. But once again, in conjunction with Studio Canal, he usually does a really nice restoration. And this, whatever transfer they provided, it looks good. No major damage or anything like that. This holds together pretty well. So if you're a Belmondo fan, I think you'll be pleased by it. You do get some special features, such as a commentary track and a trailer and stuff. If you're a Belmondo completist, good release of this one, and worth it if you just kind of like a layered crime war film. So it's some good stuff. Going back further to some silent era cinema for a couple of titles. First off, we have Cecil B. DeMille's Godless Girl. And in terms of silent era cinema, this is one of the ones that I've enjoyed the most. Just like this like atheist girl in this movie who like people are kind of sick of her and like just hates how she's kind of acting. But she has recruited like a pretty good following of people who believe in her lifestyle. And at the beginning of the movie, the people who are trying to keep her from like teaching and spreading this atheist beliefs, they kind of get into kind of a rumble, and it leads to tragedy, and it leads to both her and the guy who is opposing her being in jail. And this is really their tale of like their experiences in prison, and how their relationship develops under these new circumstances. And they kind of, it's really fascinating how this movie evolves, and just like seeing this subject matter being tackled, being before the Hays Code, and just like being able to tackle just like atheistic tendencies and stuff. I think it works really well. And if you haven't really gotten deep into silent era cinema, I think this is one of the more entertaining narratives that can like help you kind of dip your toe in a little bit. And this has also been given a 4K restoration. So it's a good disc to pick up because it also looks quite good for a silent era movie. This was 1928, and it looks really good. Of course, this being from 1928, almost 100 years ago, there are things that aren't quite perfect, and of course, like not everything will is like in perfect condition, but it looks good for what it is, and like most of the major things are avoided. And the new score composed for this, it sounds quite good. I believe that is from Carl Davis does that new soundtrack, and it sounds good. So, Godless Girl, you get a commentary track and good looking and sounding movies. So, if you're a silent era cinema fan, definitely worth checking this one out. It is one of the better silent films I've seen in recent years. Also from the silent era, going over to Milestone Films, which Kino helps distribute. We have Grass and Chang. These are two movies called Grass and a movie called Chang. These are both dealing with people in perilous situations, like dealing with the world around them, like in terms of like going over rough terrain, kind of dealing with like dangerous animals, dealing with all kind of the realities of trying to live in kind of these early eras. I think both of these are pretty entertaining. They like definitely feel like kind of like almost verite in terms of how these people are observed. And overall, I found them to be pretty interesting. I didn't like it as much as The Godless Girl, but for these early depictions of this kind of like harsh lifestyle, it works quite well. If you're an animal lover, there seems to be some potential like animal cruelty that is not simulated. I couldn't quite tell from how it was filmed, but there's definitely some tough scenes to watch in terms of how animals are treated. So just be careful if that you're sensitive to that. But overall, pretty good release here. You get a 4K restoration of Grass, and Chang gets a 2K restoration. Grass is definitely the better looking of the two. Chang has some dips in quality here and there, but overall, both of these look pretty good, and are worthy releases for what they are. In terms of special features, you get a commentary track for one of them and some interviews and stuff. So, good release from Milestone for silent era film cinema fans. This Kino and their kind of various labels are associated with are usually some of the better ones that are dealing with silent era cinema. So good to see this one show up on Blu-ray looking as good as it does. Next up, we have a couple of Jeff Bridges movies that have been missing in action on Blu-ray. First up, from 2004, we have The Door in the Floor, with him starring alongside Kim Basinger and Mimi Rogers. This is a tale of a couple who at the beginning of the film start a trial separation during the summer. They have experienced tragedy in the past, losing two of their children, and they have one child who remains, played by a baby Elle Fanning, which it was interesting to see her, like, knowing Elle Fanning now, who just, we talked about her in Predator Badlands, and she just earned an Oscar nomination for Sentimental Value. She's just a little baby here in Door on the Floor. Interesting to see her pop up, but just seeing this couple who are dealing with this tragedy of losing children, and seeing how it's like impacted their marriage, but then also how they're Jeff Bridges plays a famous artist who has contributed his own kind of problems to the marriage, and then at the same time he has a young student, like college student age, I believe, who comes to kind of serve as an apprentice to him over the summer, and he gets more than he bargains for as kind of his assistant, especially as he starts to become very infatuated with Kim Basinger's character, and how that kind of all works out. It's very sad in a lot of moments, especially as you learn more about this family's background and what they've went through. But then it's also just a couple that's really under a lot of pressure, and they have a lot of trauma that they're dealing with. Kim Basinger is amazing in this. Jeff Bridges, who I love, really gives you a lot of reasons to dislike him, but he still is likable in moments, and I think it handles this material pretty well. There are things that I don't quite love about it, but it's a very, I think, solid drama, especially from this era of just the early 2000s. The indie dramas kind of hit differently, and just like revisiting this one, I'm almost positive that I've seen this before. I had like no real memories of it, but things seemed very familiar. But now that I've watched it again, I think it is a solid movie and worth checking out. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it's gotten a new coat of paint. There doesn't seem to be a new master to this. Like I said, this is a Blu-ray debut, but it seems to be using an older master, which isn't terrible. It definitely looks like Blu-ray quality, but it probably could be refined with a new fresh 4K master or 2K master or something like that. But it looks good, but it just looks a little bit soft compared to what it probably could be in terms of pure detail and everything. But it doesn't look overly manipulated with digital tools or anything like that. It's just a kind of older but still good HD master. So glad to have it on Blu-ray at least. And I'm a Jeff Bridges fan, like I said, so glad to have this in my collection. Which I can also say about the next film, which is probably a little bit more controversial because of the co-star here. It is K-PAX, with Kevin Spacey alongside Jeff Bridges, in which Kevin Spacey plays a man who claims to be from another planet, in another solar system. And Jeff Bridges plays a therapist who is trying to figure out what is real, what isn't. Is he actually an alien? Is he just mentally ill? How can he help him no matter what is the actuality? And all kinds of stuff. And this is a movie I actually just watched. I have on DVD, and I just watched this last year for the first time in many years because I wasn't sure if this would ever get a Blu-ray release. And now, of course, here we go. And I think it's an enjoyable movie. Yes, Kevin Spacey, awful person. But just because a movie has awful people in it doesn't keep me personally from avoiding those movies. Still watch this and I enjoy it. And I think there's a lot of heart to this movie in terms of the actual story and what is trying to be conveyed and stuff. I think it's an enjoyable movie. And once again, another film that seems to use an older master. Definitely looks better than that DVD viewing that I saw last year. And just comparing the two, it is a nice bump up in quality in terms of pure detail and everything. But still looks a little bit soft at times, especially some of the earlier shots of Kevin Spacey, in the train station and stuff. When it's kind of stylized and everything, it doesn't look too hot. But most of the time, there's some nice texture and everything. So I am glad to get this Blu-ray upgrade without having to pre-order or import the imprint release from Australia. So that is something at least. So if you're a fan of this film, you can now own it on Blu-ray. It hasn't been newly remastered or anything, but it's serviceable, and for a title that probably was going to be overlooked otherwise, at least we get this release. In terms of special features, you do get a commentary track, some featurettes, an alternate ending, some deleted scenes. So carries over previous special features, so that's cool. So K-PAX on Blu-ray. Um, if you can live with seeing Kevin Spacey on your screen, I think it is still a worthwhile movie, and nice and heartfelt. Next up, we have another Blu-ray debut. This time, a Sidney Pollack film. The remake of Sabrina with Harrison Ford, Julia Ormond, and Greg Kinnear. Of course, this is a remake of the classic tale with Audrey Hepburn and Humphrey Bogart and everything. And of course, a lot of people say this movie should not be remade. Like, this is the type of movie, like, it's a classic, why remake it? And I understand that. Even with that, and knowing, like, yes, the original is a beloved classic, I didn't hate this movie. I enjoyed it for what it was, and in some ways, don't shoot me, I think it does some things better than the original movie. I know that's very controversial, but one thing I've always kind of had an issue with the original Sabrina is just the lack of actual chemistry between Sabrina. Like, Audrey Hepburn is incredible in the role, but I never really wanted her to end up with either of the brothers in the original movie. And just like, I don't know if it's just the age gap or just like, I just felt there was no passion there. And so I I was more okay with some of the chemistry things going on here. Especially like they make a little bit of like changes to the Linus character played by Harrison Ford. And so whenever there is a little bit of like romantic interest between him and Sabrina, which Julia Ormond, she does a perfectly solid job. She's no Audrey Hepburn, but she's good enough in this movie. I was actually more okay with like if they end up together, I understand why. I feel there's more of a connection there. There doesn't seem to be such a chasm between the two in terms of like just demeanor and age and stuff. Like, I don't know, they just felt more on equal footing than some of the like the original Sabrina, which yes, hate on me if you dare, if you want, but that's just how I feel. So as a romance, I enjoyed this more. As like a movie, I think it's definitely executed better in the original version, with like just some of the different choices and stuff. But this movie isn't bad, and I'm glad to have it on Blu-ray finally. And this isn't from an old crusty master. You do get a new 4K scan of the 35mm original camera negative. With that said, why wouldn't this get a 4K release with that new 4K scan? Maybe Kino didn't think it would sell well enough. But just having this on Blu-ray looking really, really nice, if you're a fan, is still very much worth it. And if they do ever decide to upgrade it on 4K, you can either rebuy it or just be happy with this really nice looking Blu-ray. So, but it is a worthwhile movie in my, like, it's directed by Sidney Pollack, for God's sake. Like, he's a great director. Harrison Ford's amazing. Like, why not? Like, we need more romance in our world, and this perfectly did the trick for me. So Sabrina on Blu-ray, looking good, sounding good, commentary track, theatrical trailer. No, like, it's a good release. So Sabrina from Kino, happy to have it. The next release, much more controversial. This is at long last the 4K debut of Dante's Peak. This was delayed almost a year from its initial announcement. It was supposed to come out earlier, like I think March or April of 2025, and now it is here, finally coming out on 4K, and the results are mixed. Dante's Peak, it's a movie about Pierce Brosnan playing a volcanologist, studying volcanoes, going to the town of Dante's Peak, trying to warn people that it looks like a volcano is going to go off, and then tries to save people whenever the volcano erupts. So, solid disaster movie. Some very, very dumb decisions by certain characters, especially the children. The children can go fuck themselves. They're ridiculous. Still a decent disaster movie, and like some good set pieces, a good mixture of practical and like digital enhancements and everything. Overall, fun movie. But let's just get into how the 4K is. So this is from a new 4K scan of the original camera negative, 35 millimeter original camera negative, approved by director Roger Donaldson. Now, like I said, this movie was originally supposed to be released last year, and rumor has it like Roger wanted to come in and add some stuff, including like an Atmos track and all of this kind of stuff. And I believe this has been released by Turbine overseas. And that leads to some problems because I think Kino has seemingly borrowed some of like the elements that Turbine worked with in terms of like creating a new Atmos track and like doing a pass on the 4K restoration and everything. So in terms of the visual quality, it looks like slightly off in terms of saturation in Dolby Vision, like maybe a little bit overly bright in areas. It doesn't look terrible, and people who aren't super nitpicky probably won't really notice it, but it just doesn't quite look right in terms of the visual quality, in addition to kind of the encoding shortcomings like compression and stuff from some of the areas. Like it just looks a little mushy and stuff and just doesn't look amazing. But it looks passable, it looks good, and definitely better than the old Universal Blu-ray that was highly processed and everything. So definitely an upgrade on that front. But the Blu-ray, which I believe was prepared like the same disc that was prepared for the original release and not touched by all this new stuff, it seems to not be as impacted by these things, which is more apparent in the audio side of things, which the 4K release has the new Atmos track and then a 5.1 and a 2.0 track. What seems to have happened here, based on certain sound effects being omitted, notably just like a wood chair falling over that's not really as audible as it probably should be. It seems like Kino took the Atmos track and down mixed it for the 5.1 and 2.0 tracks. So for a track that already isn't super as dynamic as it probably should be in terms of like pure power, for certain sequences in terms of like the volcano erupting and things just going to hell. It's not as powerful as you really want it to be. Sure, you get extra immersion, but it's kind of at the sacrifice of a little bit more of raw power. And I believe if Kino would have ported, okay, here's the thing. The original Blu-ray for Dante's Peak on here, that's included in this release that was from last year's production, presumably, it has a different 5.1 track. It doesn't have these issues of omitted sound and stuff because I believe it's the original 5.1 track provided by Universal, which is pretty powerful, and it overall sounds better than the Atmos track or any of the other tracks. So ideally, if Kino wouldn't have downmixed stuff, they could have brought over that 5.1 track over to the 4K release. Still would have had some video issues, but it would have been closer to perfect in terms of like having the more powerful 5.1 track. But instead, you have a release where arguably the Blu-ray is the better overall package in terms of like audio and video quality. But you're wanting to buy the 4K for the 4K presentation, and it's just not up to like the best of what you want it to be. It's still fine, but there are small things that are just like wrong about this release. That's very disappointing, especially since people had to wait an extra year to get to it, and now it isn't perfect. So that's a little bit disappointing. But the Blu-ray especially is a really nice, solid release, and both of these presentations are way better than any other previous like Universal Blu-ray. So overall, this is a step up from previous Universal releases, and if you're a fan of the film, I think it is worth checking out. But there are issues here, I think, introduced by the turbine of it all and like sharing of things, that keeps this from getting like the ultimate release. But it's still worth checking out if you're a fan. It's just not perfect. But you do get some special features on here, including a commentary track and a making of featurette and stuff. So, and then you also get an isolated score and effects track. So, Dante's Peak, if you're a fan, recommended with caveats, but if you know what you're getting into, I think there's more positives than negatives with this one. So Dante's Peak, check it out if you're interested. A little bit more safer to recommend is the 4K upgrade of The Mechanic. This is a film I previously talked about with the Scorpion release, and this is Kino upgrading this to 4K. What you need to know: Charles Bronson as an assassin who takes people out in ways to make it look like an accident, and how he kind of like his story evolves and meeting new people that he kind of takes under his wing and stuff, and how that kind of works out. Really good movie from Bronson, one of my more preferred of his output. And just a really solid kind of drama thriller. Just Bronson just in rare form. And in terms of the presentation, this has been given a new 4K scan of the 35mm original camera negative in Dolby Vision with the original 2.0 audio. We'll start with the audio and just saying you only have the original 2.0 audio, so it sounds good. So thank God they didn't try to mess up anything with the audio. In terms of the 4K scan, much better than their previous Scorpion releasing transfer, and in Dolby Vision, it does look quite nice. Super grainy, as it's supposed to be. Compression and encoding and stuff could be better, not the absolute worst. So overall, it does look good, not perfect. Very good, though. And I think overall, Bronson fans will be pleased with it. And then you also get 3 commentary tracks and an interview. So nice loaded release for a film that is fun and looks pretty good in Dolby Vision, 4K, everything. If you're a Bronson fan, make sure to check it out. I think you'll be pretty pleased with it. And finally, one last 4K upgrade from director Hal Ashby. It is the concert film Let's Spend the Night Together from the Rolling Stones, where you get to see them performing an array of songs here. You can kind of see. So you get stuff like Brown Sugar, Miss You, Just My Imagination, plenty of covers, like old blues and standard covers. You Can't Always Get What You Want, Satisfaction, all that stuff. So this is a pretty decent concert film. I am not like the absolute biggest Rolling Stones fan, but I love their most of their hits and stuff. I'm not like a diehard blues person, so seeing some of their interpretations of their songs, it kind of felt like Mick was a little lazy with it almost, in terms of his singing and stuff. But I didn't like some of the arrangements of some of their songs on this one, but I mean, it's still a fun time. It's the Stones, and they're great performers and musicians and stuff, and just seeing all of their kind of dynamics with one another, and like Mick as the front man and bringing on people to the stage, and it's a good time. Musically, I wasn't always completely satisfied, but still, it's a good time. It's the Stones, so it is good. I like some of the kind of more heady kind of things they're doing in terms of like sometimes they would edit in like them performing the concert over one of these nights that they were performing, and then kind of edit it in with one of their talk show appearances from like years earlier performing the same song, and kind of like transposing that. And I think that was really interesting. But yeah, if you're a Stones fan, absolutely get it. I think you'll have fun with it. And it is a nice transfer. This is another one in conjunction with Studio Canal. But maybe most notably that this is an 4K scan of the 35 millimeter original camera negative in SDR, so no Dolby Vision or HDR or anything, which usually means their compression is usually in a stronger shape, and that is the case here. It looks very, very nice in terms of like natural film grain, all that kind of good stuff. It all holds together really well, and I think overall looks really nice. Two audio tracks here, 5.1 and 2.0. I would say avoid the 5.1. I don't think it sounded particularly good for this presentation. 2.0 sounded much stronger, more robust. Just some of the 5.1 things sounded just a little off or just like shrill, or I don't know. It just didn't sound quite right. But the 2.0 does sound good. And I think that's the way to go for this one. In terms of special features, you do get 2 commentary tracks. Yeah, we got some film historian commentary tracks here. But it's a pretty solid release, and there's some minor issues, but all the important things are in order. And if you're a Rolling Stones fan, let's spend the night together. Definitely worth adding to your collection. And the 4K is particularly nice. So there you go. That's been a wide range of things I've spoken about this week. Let me know what you're most interested in checking out. I always love hearing what's connecting with you, what you might be adding to your collection. If you know anyone who loves physical media, please share this with them. I love connecting with new people. I love everyone who helps support the show. It is so appreciated. I love doing this for you, so make sure you subscribe to the Geek Vibes Nation YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode. I will be back again next week with a brand new episode, but until next time, enjoy these movies.